Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today's podcast is about 3 mistakes wives make trying to get his time and attention. My guest at Darla's marriage felt like a Cold War mixed with moments of peace, like a dark novel. The lack of intimacy was excruciating, and she didn't know how to break out of it. Then she learned about a secret affair from 5 years ago when she was a new mom. But today, she feels like she's in love. Her husband flirts with her, and the intimacy is great. He told her that he feels butterflies when he kisses her. She's going to tell us exactly what she did so you can do it too. Then I'll be giving out the worst relationship advice of the week award, which is about how to get your husband to take out the garbage. But this advice should be left at the curb on trash day. All of that's coming up. But first, let's talk about 3 mistakes wives make trying to get his time and attention. This is about how to get the consideration you want the way you want it. Wouldn't it be a wonderful world if marriage came with an easy-to-follow instruction manual? Who's with me? But since it doesn't, you bumble along trying out relationship advice you got at the hair salon or from well-meaning friends and even strangers at bars. There's a lot of bad relationship advice floating around, disguised as common sense. Maybe that's why so many marriages are falling apart. Here are 3 common mistakes that wives like me make to get more time and attention from their husbands. Number 1 is pointing out that he's not giving you time and attention. Isn't it just honest and even important to let your partner know when he's not meeting your needs? If you don't tell him he needs to be more attentive and affectionate, how will he know, right? The problem is pointing out what he's doing wrong is the same as complaining. And Gandhi was right when he said, don't complain. Complaining won't take you anywhere. Nothing will change unless you change. But did that stop me from complaining to my husband that he should spend more time with me and pay more attention to me? No, it did not. I'd say things like, you never spend any time with me, or why don't you turn off the TV for once so we can talk? And as you can imagine, those words didn't inspire my husband to whisk me off to a romantic dinner or have a long, deep conversation or walk hand in hand on the beach. To put it in perspective, imagine hearing those words from a friend. You'd think the friend was needy or at least unpleasant. In other words, pointing out what he's not doing will only make him less inclined to give you his time or his attention. Don't worry, there's a much more effective way to get the connection you crave, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But first, are you making this common mistake? Number 2, hanging around waiting for him. This is another common mistake, is arranging your schedule according to when he's available instead of according to your own desires. One student, Shauna, stayed home most nights and weekends, hoping that her husband would be available to her, but it rarely worked out that way. Instead, she found herself waiting around bored while he worked late or even made other plans. Resentful that she was the only one making their couple time a priority, she was often angry by the time he showed up because it was too little too late. That perpetuated the cycle of him avoiding her. After all, who's going to feel drawn to a resentful, prickly wife? It wasn't until Shauna started making her own plans, even if that meant they wouldn't be together, that her husband started seeking her out more. Her interesting, enjoyable life made her much more appealing. Number 3 is doing things for him so he'll have more time for you. Finally, one of the most common mistakes women like me make when trying to get their husband's time and attention is tending to his responsibilities so he won't be so busy. The theory is that if he has more free time, he could spend it with you. But doing things for my husband that he could do for himself just backfired. Here's why. If you make his invoices for work or pack his lunch and go to the dry cleaner for him to give him more downtime, you begin to resemble his mother. Men are not romantically attracted to their mothers. Also, expending all that energy on his chores could wear you out and even make you resentful, neither of which is attractive. In fact, that could make you entirely resistible. On top of that, a man has a hero gene that makes him feel most ardently in love with his wife when he can do something to improve her life, not when she does something to improve his. Which brings us to what will get your husband's time and attention: a respectful and ridiculously happy wife. One of the things that originally attracted your husband was that you respected him. You thought he was smart and capable. That made you special and irresistible. And happy wives draw their husbands to them like a magnet to steel. The more he sees you smiling and laughing, the closer he wants to get to you. And if you're anything like me, that's the most gratifying way to attract his time and attention. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest Darla's marriage felt like a Cold War mixed with moments of peace, like a dark novel. The lack of intimacy was excruciating, and she didn't know how to break out of it. Then she learned about a secret affair from 5 years ago when she was a new mom. But today, she feels like she's in love. Her husband flirts with her, and the intimacy is great. He told her that he feels butterflies when he kisses her. She's going to tell us exactly what she did, so you can do it too. Darla, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Laura. It's such an honor. Thank you for your books and your intimacy skills. It changed my life. Thank you.
Oh, great to hear. Well, we want to hear the whole story. So take us back to the bad old days, to the beginning. What was happening in your marriage?
Yeah. So in my marriage, it was just Cold War after Cold War. We would make up, but it was a pattern, and I didn't understand how this could happen because my husband and I, we met at church. He was from another country. He came on fiancé visa to marry me, and we had to prove our love to the United States government so that he could come in. So of course, this was a marriage made in heaven, and things were good for about the first 2 to 3 years, and then things started taking a turn. And I'd say at the worst part, I would say, like, I would think I hate you in my mind when he was talking to me, and it's horrible just to think that could have happened, but I would think that I hate you, and then I would even like say it under my breath. Sometimes it was so painful. Or I would park in the garage, and I'd be like, I don't want to go in right now and feel this Cold War. I just don't want to go in the house. He would leave on like a trip, maybe to see his family overseas for like a week to 2 weeks, and I wouldn't miss him. And like that was just some big flags to me that things were not going smoothly. But it started out so well. I didn't know what had happened.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing. Like, how did we even get here when you're so happy in the beginning? But it sounds like you were very hurt.
I was very hurt. I didn't know how we had gotten to that point. It's just kind of a culture of disrespect. Like, I think we would argue and I would raise my voice, and then he would get mad at me raising my voice. I didn't realize that was disrespectful. And then the Cold Wars could last days to weeks. I just these spirals of Cold Wars.
Yeah. So
I didn't know how to pull myself out of it.
No. And then during the Cold War, so there was just like no talking, or was there arguing also?
A lot of times there was no talking, just avoiding. Yeah.
And so then the tension is just thick, even though it's quiet between you. And that's very lonely also. I remember from my house. Yeah, how lonely. So was there...
And our daughter was young, and I didn't know about self-care then, so I felt overwhelmed with that. I was the breadwinner at the time, financial breadwinner, and I felt responsible for the home and the financial side of it. So I felt overwhelmed, and I felt like I was in a hole.
I mean, were you thinking, why do I even need this guy? Did it ever cross your mind to maybe end your marriage?
I had so much faith that God had brought us together. Like, I knew I had a covenant. I made a covenant before all these people and before God. And I just, like, I know, like, I heard it morphs into something like to where you're not in love, and love is a choice. And, these things we hear over the years. And I was like, well, I made this choice, and it's my fault, and I'm just going to have to get through it, even if there's not a lot of love there, like feelings of love. I made a choice. So I'm just going to have to stick with it. I didn't know that things could be better.
Wow. But you were as unhappy and sad as you were willing to continue on like that for the rest of your life, it sounds like.
Yes, I have other things that bring me joy. But I would hope that, since my marriage is just that, so important, that it could have been something that just brought me joy on a daily basis, but I was stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. So was there ever a moment where you thought, okay, we can't go on like this. Something's really got to give?
It wasn't so much. It was just, I made that decision to stay with him, and just day by day. I just took it day by day. But the thoughts, when I think back, it's the thoughts of saying I hate you in my mind that really, really showed me how unhealthy we were.
And how painful it was for you, right, to get to that point. So what happened?
Well, I was looking through just Amazon recommendations for books. Just came across your book one day, and I started reading some of the testimonials, and most of them sounded good. But I've read several marriage books, and they all seem the same, and they all say, well, respect your husband, and give up yourself for him, basically. But this was different. Yeah, this was so different. And so I saw the book, and I was like, I'm not even going to spend money on this book. I'm going to see if the library has it. So I checked my local library, and they had it. So went, picked it up, started reading it, and I started experimenting with everything, all of the skills that you talked about. It was The Surrendered Wife that I read first. And everything worked. Like within 2 weeks, like my marriage was completely different, and it was like a miracle. Or
what did you try? What kinds of things did you do?
Yeah, so in The Surrendered Wife, you talk about maybe starting in the car. So I started in the car with duct tape, and I decided it's really hard not to tell someone when the light turns green to go and things like that, or where to park or slow down. So that was like perfect practice for me to duct tape. So I would sit in the car, and I wouldn't tell them where to go or how to get there. And it was just, I could ease my way into these skills, and that worked really well. I remember one day I had a vase of flowers on my lap, and I was thinking, what if he has to slam on his brakes? And it ended up happening. Like, he slammed on his brakes, and I didn't say anything. And my daughter's in the back seat, and she's like, "Mom, you didn't say anything. What is this?" And then my husband turned back to her, and he like patted my head, and he said, "You see, your mother trusts me." And it's like little things like that. Like all these, I have so many little stories about things that work, just out of the blue things he would say to know, just show me he was responding to what I was doing. It's beautiful.
That is beautiful. Well, amazing. So within 2 weeks, you felt like you had a new marriage, it sounds like. And you started by relinquishing
It
control in the
does, yeah.
car. What else did you do that was different?
Well, I stopped telling him what to wear. Like every Sunday morning, he would ask me what to wear for church, and that's when I realized, and we would get in an argument like almost every Sunday because he would have like two things, and I would pick the wrong thing in his mind, and so then he would start disrespecting me or insulting me because, like, jokingly, but it would start. And to this day, sometimes he still asks me what he should wear, but I don't tell him anymore. And that was actually the first time I used ouch. I shouldn't have been telling him what to wear in the first place, but he said an insult to me, and I said ouch, and like the argument stopped, and I was like, this is magic. Like, like usually it would go on and on and on. We'd be Cold War on the way to church, and it just stopped. And I was like, oh my goodness, these skills work.
Wow, that is so cool. So he still asks you, what do you say now when he asks you what
he still gives me bait.
Well, sure, right?
He still does. Most of the time he doesn't, but every once in a while he does. But I just duct tape about it and kind of laugh, and he kind of laughs about it too. But and I stopped reminding him to take out the trash. I gave him the thanks he deserved for it. Thanks for so many years. I didn't, I always thought if I would thank him for something, it may become optional to him to do it, and I learned that's not the truth. So I started getting all this thanks back, all this gratitude back, that I was stingy in giving him gratitude. And so that worked beautifully too. Then he showered it back on me. Oh yeah. I didn't criticize his gifts. I became a better receiver. I stayed out of his business. That was big for me, Laura. So he was kind of starting a company around this time that I started reading the books and wanting to change. And he would ask me all the time, what do you think about this on the website? What do you think about this? And I decided, because I had just read your book, that I was going to duct tape about it instead of giving him my fears and my opinions, which for me, more, maybe a little on the fear side. So I would take a step back and maybe tell him to not be so gung-ho into building this business. Well, now this business is our major source of income, and I would have stifled that by everything I would have told him. And I get to stay home part-time with my babies, and I would have stopped that process from happening because of my fear. So I just had to duct tape, and like you say in your books, why would I know what's better for my husband's business than my husband? Like, that made so much sense to me. So now I just let him talk and duct tape, and it works beautifully for him. He just needs to know that he makes the right decision, that he makes good decisions is why he's talking out loud to me.
Yeah, he wants to be seen and heard and respected, and you're giving him that, which is, I'm totally impressed that you did that. Now, did that bring up some fear for you? Because sometimes when he was asking about the business, didn't you think like, oh my gosh, did you ever think like, oh, this is not going to go well, or that's a big mistake?
Of course. Yes. Okay. I still think that sometimes.
Right.
But what I do is I treat it like an experiment. And then usually, almost 100% of the times it works out to where he was right in the first place. And he really does not want my opinion. He just wants to talk it out and know that he makes good decisions. So that's probably one of the things that has changed our marriage the most, is me not being helpful, because you're the first person that told me I didn't have to be helpful. Like, I didn't have to, I would emasculate him by helping him so much with business and everything. And once he made his own decisions, he could feel the weight of those decisions. And there was such a weight taken off of me that I didn't have to be responsible for his decisions. It made me a lighter person.
Wow. So he looks into his wife mirror and he sees reflected back to him, I trust you. I think you make good decisions. And so he has, sounds like.
I used the spouse fulfilling prophecy I said, you make great decisions. I said that one morning. And then later that day, I said, you have great ideas. And then later that day, he was like, I have a great idea. And you had a great idea. And so now he'll come to me and my daughter and he'll be like, I have an idea. And he wants us basically to say, you have the best ideas. What is it?
Oh,
and he does.
God.
He has great ideas.
So it feels true. It feels true. So when you first,
true.
It is true. So, okay, so when you first said it, though, you make the best decisions. You have great ideas. Did that feel like a stretch? Did you feel like, I'm not so sure about this, but I'm going to say it anyway?
A little bit. I mean, this has been fairly recent, so now that I've known the skills, I know them to be true, and I do trust his decisions. But yeah, back in the day, I would have been. I've had to say things before, like whatever you think, and like leave the room because it was weighing on me so much. Like I couldn't say anything else. I just physically had to leave the room because I didn't know what the right decision was. So I have had to do that before. Just literally leave the room.
Like before the duck flies off and you start. But what I think is
exactly.
Yeah, I relate to that so much. I love that. Exactly. I love it. So it was a very conscious effort on your part, right? This takes some focus, probably to this day. Does it feel like it takes some focus?
It takes a lot of focus. I feel like I say a thing in my head, and then I think, okay, is there a you in there? Or like it's still a process that I'm changing the way I'm speaking and thinking, but it's gotten a lot easier, and it's totally worth it. It's totally worth it for the intimacy. Yeah, just it's a choice. It's really is a choice to choose intimacy.
Yeah, it's a choice, and you know how to choose it now. You didn't know how to choose it previously, but now you do, and it's like a price you're willing to pay. It sounds like for the great marriage. Now, he also came to you with bad news at one point about an affair.
Yes.
This was after you had this already.
Yes. Let me speak about how I had my baby because of the skills, and then I'll go into that. So I read The Surrendered Wife, and it was probably a month or two later. And these skills were not just seeping into my marriage, but into my whole life, like, different parts of my life. So one Sunday, our pastor ended up speaking on surrendering. It was probably about a month or two after I read the book. So I'm this expert on surrendering now, right? Because it's been a month or two, and I'm an expert because I read the book. So he preaches on that. And then at the end of the service, he was like, okay, well, bow your heads, ask God if there's anything you haven't surrendered. So I didn't expect to hear anything because I'm this expert on surrendering now. So I close my eyes and listen, and I hear the words, your reproductive tract. And I was like, God, you are so right, because I'd had my daughter almost 9-10 years earlier. And I didn't want to have another baby because of some complications I'd had. But when he said that, like, I knew what surrendering meant now. It meant saying, whatever you think. It meant saying, I trust your decisions. So within a month or two, I was pregnant, and I would have a baby at 40. And so I just had to just give it to him and trust him. And I tell you, that baby boy he is such an addition to our life. So thank you, Laura, for teaching me what respect means, whatever you think means, because we had a miracle baby because of that. So life was good. So we had our baby boy, and I had self-care this time. It was so much better because with my daughter, I didn't have self-care, and I was just worn out. And But 7 weeks, the baby had a 7-week appointment, and my husband was acting kind of drawn back and distant. And I knew something was coming, but I tried to stay on my own paper. So he sat me down when the baby was 7 weeks, and he was like bawling, like he could hardly get the words out. And he told me that he had an affair, and it had been years earlier. And my heart was just broken, and it was with a friend of mine. And and I just I it's kind of like when you don't have words, you're just quiet, like you don't even know what to say. And but I needed him, and he had just been with me through this, his intense delivery. It was short, but it was like no epidural, and he was there. He was my partner, and he was taking good care of our family. And and I decided that there was one thing that was on my paper, and that was to forgive him. So, because forgiveness is on my paper, and and so I know now forgiveness is more even for ourselves than for the people that we forgive. So I did forgive him, and we just started to heal together. And I tried to not talk about it very much with him. Of course, things came up and awkwardness, even between the other couple and us. But but I tried to smother it, and I didn't give it the oxygen that it deserved. And I realized too, like even a year after he had told me about it, that I was responsible for healing myself. Like he wasn't responsible for that. So I really started digging deep and reading certain books on healing and loving, like being a loving person and forgiving. And I realized that was on my paper. And so so it's been about 2.5 years since I found out, and we are so good now. But it was really, really hard to go through. But I had the skills, Laura. Thank you so much. I had those skills because the affair had happened pre-skills before I didn't know anything, and then now I had your skills to help me through it. And I knew not to go to marriage counseling. I think just by default we would have went to marriage counseling before, but I knew that it would just be speaking badly of my husband, during the sessions. And he had proven himself to me that he was an excellent father and husband, and it wasn't necessary. So yeah, that was a hard time, but we made it, and things are better than ever.
Oh, wow. Impressive. I love that you saw like, okay, forgiving him is on my paper and I want to do that. Can you walk us through that process a little bit? Because I think this is it's very challenging for a lot of women
Mm-hmm.
to find that forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering what your process was for that.
Well, I wanted to keep my side of the street clean. So if that meant forgiving him and and the girl, my friend that did that to me, then I was going to do that. So I did tell him I forgave him. I even texted the girl before she even texted me that I forgave her, and that I didn't think she was the same person that that had done that to me so many years before. So I think my main thing in my mind was that I wanted to keep my side of the street clean. And I just know that I had forgiven him so much that how could I hold so much against other people because I'd been forgiven. So that's kind of what was in my mind.
That
Yeah.
is amazing. So this really affects the way you show up in the world to everyone, to this friend that betrayed you, to your husband. How would you say that you've changed personally?
Well, I love having gone through it so that I can help other people. I love I feel like it's a test that I passed, and I feel like I know I know how to have grace with people and to not expect perfection, to be more empathetic with people, gone through a little bit of pain and having shown people that there's definitely hope and that all things work out for our good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I just imagine there must be such a, well, I really hear this feels like an accomplishment, first of all, and I agree. It's a huge accomplishment that you have made you've created a wonderful family where there was all this, there was a lot of heartbreak and there could have been just a lot more conflict out of it. And I just imagine there's so much dignity and such a good, clean feeling in being able to text somebody and say, I forgive you before she even talked to you.
that that is a good yes. I like that word dignity. Like I felt good about it. Good about myself for doing it. Yeah, that's a perfect word. Just showing up as my best self, like your books say.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it sounds like there'd be a lot of confidence. You seem very confident to me, Darla, that, right, to be able to speak about this conversation, it's obviously still, right. It's an old hurt, but the way you speak about it,
Mhm.
it does seem like you're very confident in what you've created and the choices that you've made.
Thank you so much. I'm working on it. I'm working on it, and going through coach training has helped with that too, with the confidence level. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, okay, so tell me, so what is your marriage like now? What happens at your house now?
Well, whereas before I wouldn't miss him if he'd go on a 1 week journey somewhere. I miss him if he's gone 30 minutes. And text. We text several times a day saying we love each other and I love you and thanks for working and I'm a more pleasable person, more laid back. I don't have to get my way all the time. I don't have to be a know-it-all. That's such a relief to not have to show up as a know-it-all. Relinquishing the finances, wow, that helped a lot. He made a budget. We're both self-employed, so taxes every year was such a burden for us. Well, he went and hired an accountant to help us with the process. Just all these manly take charge things started happening. Like I said, he flirts with me. He takes my daughter to and from school most days, so I can sleep in the morning with the baby. So that's so nice of him. And he'll tell me to come closer to him on the couch, and not long after I'd started the skills. He kissed me and he said, I feel butterflies, and I was thinking that takes me back to even pre-marriage engagement, falling in love, in those same feelings. So that was so encouraging after this experimenting, just seeing if things were worked. It was so encouraging to get that feedback. So yeah, so renting that book from the library was so worth it. And now of course I own every book you've written, Laura.
Yeah, yeah. And you are very committed to paying it forward to helping other women now as well.
Yes, ma'am. So yeah, so I signed up for coach training and it's been such a great experience. And then yeah, just being on the podcast even is a stretch for me. I'm a little on the introverted side and but I want to help you in your mission to end world divorce. So so I had to do it.
Such an honor to have you on this podcast, Darla. You have such a great story. So, what is your tip for a woman who might be feeling like you did, where she hates her husband, she doesn't miss him when he's gone, it's
Mhm.
constant cold
Mhm.
wars, she feels so stuck, and she wants to have a marriage where they're constantly thanking each other and texting each other, and he says,
Mhm.
"Come closer" on the couch, and he kisses her and gets butterflies. She wants that. What is your best tip for her? Where should she start?
Mm. Well, first of all, me looking at everything as an experiment really helped. But if you need to take baby steps, the car thing was great because it really just gave me a point to start. So just being in the car and letting him be the chauffeur and not telling him when the light turns green and not saying I know a better direction. Just sit back and let him drive and let him be a man and listen to him without giving your opinion. That was so huge for me. Was just that I don't have to be so helpful. I do need to listen and I need to be his cheerleader and believe in him more than anyone else, but I don't have to give him my opinions. He's man enough to make his own decisions, and he has great ideas. Yeah.
I love that. Do you ever feel like, though, what about my opinions? Like, my opinions count too. Like, I should be able to say these things. Do you ever have that come up?
Sometimes I feel that. The other day I was listening to him for like an hour talk about his work. And I had tried earlier that week to tell him something that had happened to me. And I got 2 sentences out and he said, "Oh, well, you're just going to have to get over that. You're going to have to toughen up." So during that whole hour session of me listening to him, in my mind, I'm thinking, what I want to say is, you couldn't listen to me for 2 sentences and I'm here listening to you for an hour.
Right?
But oh my gosh, at the end of it, Laura, he thanked me several times. He said, I don't have anyone else to talk to like this, but talk about this, but you. And he smothered me with intimacy. And I realized that it's a choice, because I really want to say, you can't listen to me for 2 minutes, but I was experimenting. I was saying, I am just going to listen. And even with bait, he was saying, "Well, you're quiet tonight," or "What do you think?" And I just wouldn't tell him. And I would just became his safe place. And he just, intimacy, this happened a week or so ago. Intimacy is still good after that. So for those women out there, if they can just listen and duct tape and just be an encouragement to him, then that's really what they need. I think in my life, that's what mattered. Mm-hmm.
Wow. I love it. Right. It's not perfect at your house. Just like it's not perfect at my house. He still does things.
No.
And that probably hurt when he said, "You're just going to have to toughen up and get over it." But you made the decision to experiment. And you're a scientist, right? You're a science person. So I think experimenting, is that part of your previous training? That's why you're so good at experimenting?
Yes, yes, I'm an optometrist. So we did yes, we had to do a lot of science experiments and things. And if I can treat it like an experiment, then I get to see if it works. And like I said, it always works. So then that's my evidence. That's my evidence to keep going and doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Using your skills.
Is right there to say, you couldn't even listen to me for 2 minutes. And it's just sounds like it's just no longer worth the price of admission to criticize him like that.
Not at all. Not at all. Nope. Nope. I'm still reaping the benefits from that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right. I love it. And you're focused on that. You're focused on like, things are great at my house, so that it feels like a small thing in a way to not say it. But I love this, how specific that story is. So I can really see myself at your house, and I imagine that kind of conversation happening in my house too, making that decision like, all right, I'm letting this one go. It's not worth it. It's fine.
Yes. Hearing his heart message. Yeah.
Yeah. Hearing his heart message, right? Hearing him say how great it is and how much he loves you, that you listen to him. Mm-hmm. So, what about if you could go back and talk to Darla from before you knew what you know now? What would you say to her?
Mainly, it would be that you don't have to help him. Like he's a great man and he's trustworthy, and you don't have to try so hard. You don't have to try. You can be happy in that. It's not my husband's job to make me happy. I really thought that. But yeah, just don't be so helpful. Just let him be a man. But him coming from another country, or he had never written a check. He had never had a bank account. So it was kind of like I had to step up and write the bills, things like that.
Who else is going to do it? There's no one else to do it. You didn't have to. But you didn't have to.
I didn't have to. I didn't have to do all that. I should have just let him be a man. Yeah.
So did you ever imagine back then that he would be the main? It sounds like he's the main breadwinner now, and you're part-time.
Yeah, I'm just part-time. And I didn't know how that would happen, but thank God, like even during this COVID season, like his business, he's internet, so his business boomed. So I took a step back and I had to close my office for a while. And we're keeping it like that. We're keeping it to where he works more than I do. And I get to stay home with my 2-year-old most days. So yeah, what a blessing, what a plus. Yeah. And I truly believe that came from surrendering the finances. That was probably the first step for that happening. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Darla, I'm so inspired. This is just beautiful. What a powerful story. You're going to be an inspiration to so many women. And I'm just so grateful. We got to hear your story so authentically. Yeah. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. I'm so thankful to you and to God. Thank you so much.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that I find most foul this week is from a PhD who wrote an article for a well-known publication that I get a lot of worst relationship advice material from. Like if it's a slow week for bad relationship advice, I can reliably turn to this publication, which rhymes with mythology passé, for a strong contender to win the award. And this week is no exception. In fact, this one article has so much bad relationship advice in it that I've decided to give it the award for this week and for next week. This is a first for the Empowered Wife podcast, that we have a Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award series for one article. The article is about how to effortlessly get your way, which I think is a great topic. She breaks it down into steps, and we'll just get to the first 2 steps this week, but wait till you hear the rest of the perplexing steps next week. Whew. This well-meaning but befuddled author suggests that step 1 is to describe what is going on in brief, descriptive terms that don't judge. She writes, instead of saying, "You never take out the trash," she says, say, "I noticed the trash looks full." Avoid blaming the person and be as descriptive as possible. Then she goes on to say that step 2 is to make the ask. Ask for what you need. State your request directly and clearly. Specify a time frame if needed. For example, "I would really like it if you could take out the trash today." So we'll pause right there and just celebrate this part as the Worst Advice of the Week award winner for week 1. Next week, we'll get into the rest of this terrible advice because, oh boy, does it ever go all wrong. It just totally goes kablooey. This article brought back traumatic memories from the old days at my house when I could not figure out how to get my husband to take out the trash or do anything else to help around the house. And it was a major source of conflict. It was so frustrating. I would say things just like, I would really like it if you could take out the trash today, John. And he would resist mightily, and I would be resentful, and he would be withdrawn, and the trash would smell. Or I'd take it out myself and be even more resentful. And then that would come out sideways, and I'd have a full-on ugly rage at him. And then the inevitable emotional hangover from that rage would hit me. So it was terrible. But reading this article also made me reflect on how grateful and happy I am that my husband takes out the trash so much that I rarely ever notice it being full, along with always cleaning the kitchen, charging the car, and lots of other stuff to lighten my load. So I was thinking about that when I read this article, and I randomly said, I'm so happy and grateful that you always take out the trash and I never even have to think about it, to my husband. And then John said, I better check on it right now to make sure it's empty in case you want to throw something away. So he did check on it, but it was already 3/4 empty. So nothing to do there. So we've come a long way, baby. I can tell you that in my experience, if the goal is to have an empty trash can and a playful, passionate relationship, the advice in this article is definitely not the way you want to go. Oh, sure. It sounds a lot better to say, I noticed the trash looks full than to say, you never take out the trash. But if your husband is the primary trash taker outer, then the subtext of saying, I noticed the trash looks full is, you didn't take out the trash again, Mr. Lazy Pants. So it's a complaint. And the problem with complaining is that it's a sign that you have your manifestor pointed to the thing that you don't want to be experiencing, like a full or overflowing trash can. And since what you're focusing on increases, complaining, even if it's buttoned up and said in a nice tone of voice, it just ensures that you're going to experience more of the same, which in this case is overflowing trash cans. What if, instead of noticing that the trash can was full, you caught him doing something good? So when the trash can is empty or half empty, you could say, I noticed the trash can is empty again. Wouldn't that also be a true statement? And the subtext is, I see how you contributed to cleaning our house. I see how you contributed to keeping our house orderly, lightening my load. You could even add your gratitude or happiness to that, like, it's empty again, thanks. As with my husband, John, when I thanked him for always taking out the trash, which is truly the experience I have, he immediately checked to see if it needed to be taken out. It didn't, because he'd already done that without me saying anything. And if I said, I would like it if you could take out the trash today, Mr. Lazy Pants, I have a lot of emotional safety in the bank around here because I don't usually say things like that. So maybe it would be okay. Maybe he would take it out. I don't know. But I feel better and happier focusing on how good I have it than I do focusing on what he didn't do that I think he should have. And I like myself more when I hear gratitude coming out of my mouth than when I hear poorly disguised complaints. And then he responds to me so much better too. So for that reason, the advice to say, I noticed the trash looks full and I would really love it if you could take out the trash today, is the very, very worst relationship advice I've heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. And hey, if you're one of the hundreds of women who left a review on iTunes for this podcast, thank you. I'm so happy you did that, because when you leave a rating and review, iTunes pays attention to that, and they push the podcast out to other women who wouldn't have heard about it. If you left a review on Stitcher or Amazon, I appreciate that too. Thanks for contributing to the mission to end world divorce with your reviews and ratings. I'm so grateful. On next week's podcast, I'll share 3 moves to restore the peace after a fight. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I can stop reading a great book anytime, unless it's after bedtime and I only have 27 chapters left.